Now, I'm going to go ahead and open up the program. We'll talk about just a general overview of those new features, and then open up to any questions that you may have at the end of the presentation. The Infinity icon is on your desktop, just as it always has been. Maybe a little bit of a different, fresher look to it. You get to your server selection, you hit OK, and this will take you into Infinity. Well, you get to the login screen first, I should say, and on the login screen, there are a couple of changes that have taken place. Number one, and probably most notably, is that instead of having users, we now have operators. So in previous versions of the program, we would have the front desk user, the exam user, the administrator user. Now we have changed over to actually attributing the quote-unquote user to an operator, and that's an individual that goes into the program and has everything that they do in the program attributed to them based on who logs in. So in this case, I have Wendy Brisky selected. Wendy would probably type in a password and then be taken into the program under her name. The operator replaces the cashier. It also replaces the medical record entry user. So if you're using those in your current system, we're going to eliminate them, replace them with the operator, and that's going to help with security as well as just saving you some time. Instead of having to always answer those prompts as they come up on the screen, you do it once when you log in, and that is it. We'll talk a little bit more in detail about the operators as we get into the program. The application date is very, very similar. One thing that you'll notice is that when you choose the calendar, we'll see within the calendar that you can select the Today button, and that will jump to whatever your Windows date is. So if I choose today, it should jump right to September 1st, which is the actual day that we are recording this webinar. You can still always select the date by clicking on it. And we also have a new feature where it will advance the day by 1 business day. So today we're on September 1st. However, tomorrow morning when we come in and we want to advance the date, rather than having to go into this calendar view and pick Friday the 2nd, we can simply say advance to the next business day. Now go ahead and push it forward. Now, typically you're going to have these advanced options hidden because you're not going to need to access these on a regular basis. However, if you want to see what they are, we have the database. You pick which database you log into. Again, that should never change, or rarely should that change. There are only a select number of practices out there that have multiple databases. We then have business. Business is just the other name for practice. We used to call it a practice. Now it's a business to help to accommodate those that aren't really veterinary practices. They're boarding facilities, they're pet resorts, daycares, things like that, where it's not a practice, but it's a business that uses Infinity. And then we've got the desktop. The desktop helps us to decide what appears on the screen, what order things display in. Some of those settings used to reside under the user, but once again, because we've eliminated the user and we've created the operator instead, we now have desktop to control those types of things. And desktop can be shared amongst multiple operators. Typically, you're going to have all of your front desk computers on the front desk desktop. You're going to have all of your exam computers on the exam desktop so that they look appropriate for the specific desktop that you're sitting in front of. When we're all set here on the login screen, we can go ahead and hit OK. That's going to log us into the program. We're going to have a pop-up here in just a moment. There it is for technical staff. That's for myself. You will not see that in your practice. And so the program with a new splash screen loads. And let me go ahead and maximize this, give us the full screen view. Now I'm going to actually just kind of do a quick overview of what you see on the screen here. The first thing that probably jumps out at you is this front desk. Front desk is not only a picture of a front desk, but it also serves as shortcuts to the different modules you need to get into to operate your business. So if you look at the picture and you see something like the help text, or like the appointment scheduler, medical records, all of these pictures actually allow you to go into the different parts of the program and perform those tasks. And what's great about this screen too is that if you hover your mouse over the top of something, it'll tell you what that button does. in order to get the button to do what you want it to do, you have to double click on it. We did it that way because we don't want somebody to accidentally click someplace and have it go into the program, to that part of the program, without them confirming with that double click. Alright, so that's the desktop. It's a great new feature. We don't anticipate that you're going to use it on a daily basis, but if you have a new staff member, somebody that's never used the program before, you can sit them in front of this screen and say, hey, go into the appointment scheduler. And it might take a couple seconds to locate it, but once they see that appointment scheduler and select Easy Time, they're going to be at the right spot. Add a new client. Oh, double click on the client. Add a new patient. Go to inventory. So it's pretty self-explanatory for those that are just learning the program. Now you'll find, like I said a little while ago, that when you open other modules, this desktop or this front desk is going to be hidden, so you're not going to really see it throughout the day. You can always revert back to it if you need to get someplace within the program. But we're going to talk about some of the other methods you can use in addition to the front desk. Now let's go to the upper left-hand corner. And we're going to start off, this quick access bar here gives you access to the time clock and emailing customers. So that's another spot for it. We have the patient singlement across the top of the screen. When we pick somebody like Bullet, we see Bullet, when they were born, sex, weight, breed, name of the business, and the current date. Dropping down one line, we see that we have several different menus. Now these menus are going to differ quite a bit from the menus you were used to in Infinity, in previous versions of Infinity. We have what's called ribbon bars. These ribbon bars give you a little bit more capability, a little more function than the previous menus did. We'll talk about those. I'm going to go through some examples here. Here's the invoicing menu. We tried to organize the modules into a little bit broader categories. So your invoicing, your customers, your medical records, scheduling, communications, business-related items, some tools that you can use, as well as your help menu. Now, if you wanted to select any of these options, you'd simply click on the button and it would launch that part of the menu. Going back over to something like customers. Let's say you need some help with setting up your database. Well, in the previous version of the program, you would go to Setup, Client Patient Database, and then select your setup options. In this new version, you've got the database module, and just below the module is a drop-down that you can select the appropriate setup screen from. So it's a little bit more intuitive. If I'm looking for setup for prescriptions, for travel sheets, for estimates, if I need some help with medical records or labs, they are all immediately underneath the module that you are working on. Okay, so that's something that, again, will take a little getting used to, but I think in the long run, it makes a lot more sense to have them right underneath the module they help to set up, as opposed to having to go to a different location. Well, let's go back over to the home ribbon. That home ribbon has some hard-coded features that are going to be available to everybody. The rest of the ribbons can be customized, and those are desktop specific. Remember, we logged in as the administrator desktop. The administrator desktop is set up to look the way that it does. You could have the exam desktop set up to look a different way, maybe have different modules, front desk to look a different way, and so on. In the upper left, on the first home ribbon bar, we see the picture of the patient, and we see the name of the client, name of the patient, the ID, client and patient ID, and if we want more information about this patient, we would simply click the button, actually the arrow to the right of the button, to expand out to give us all of the different patients underneath this client. And I misspoke there. To actually get the information about the patient, we would click on the image. And that's going to open up what's called the dashboard. The dashboard will have the database and alert information that we were used to seeing within patient processing. The great thing about the dashboard is it is available throughout the entire program. So you don't have to be in patient processing or medical records to access this. You can really be anywhere. You know, if you get a phone call and you're in the middle of doing inventory, you can be in the inventory module as long as you have the right patient on the top of the screen. When you click on the image, it'll display their info, allow you to even change the database info you see here, switch between patients, and when you're all done, you close it, and any changes that you've made are saved. Now that dashboard, I guess we'll just segue here very quickly. Let's go into patient processing. You'll find that within patient processing, and let's open up medical records as well, within the medical record module, they used to be, the features that you saw within the dashboard used to be at the top of each of these modules, patient processing and medical records. We have stripped the database and the alert sections out of these modules and have put them into the dashboard. Okay, and so for some of you, that's going to be a major change. You're used to using the database and the alerts at the top of the patient processing module as well as medical records. But we've actually taken care of that. If you want it to be visible on the screen, you can dock this. And so we can click it, drag it, and take it down to this spot right here where I'm hovering over the top, right in the middle of the screen, click on or release on the arrow pointing up, and that's going to dock it, this dashboard, right to the top of our screen. So now, once we scroll everything down, drag it down a little bit, this should look nearly identical to what you were used to in medical records or patient processing. But again, because we've added this dashboard and made it available in every module, if I were to go into a module like the inventory module, I was working on my inventory, I could work on my inventory while still having that database and alert information at the top of my screen. You can always go like this to give yourself a little bit more workspace, either on the top or the bottom, so you have that as an option. We can have the dashboard automatically dock so that you don't have to worry about docking it every time you come into the program. So it would automatically dock at the appropriate size. If you want to get rid of it, simply hit the X in the upper right hand corner here. The dashboard is gone, but again, easily accessible by clicking on the picture of the patient or of the client. Let's slide over just a little bit. How do we find clients and patients? Well, that has changed a little bit too. In previous versions of Infinity, you had several different text boxes with the binoculars. Those text boxes have all been removed, and they are replaced with a couple of different options. One is the Find option. You can click Find. Find is going to give you whatever database fields you want to search on. And I've customized this to only display client ID, first name, last name, home phone, and patient name. You decide what results you get. Are you going to get just your clients or your patients? You can even decide your search options. Do we want it to be an exact match? You have to spell the name correctly. Sounds like, where there's something that goes on behind the scenes that if you type in a name, it's going to find all of the names that sound like that name in case you misspell it. Starts with, if you know their last name starts with STE, you can type in STE and it's going to find everybody whose last name starts with those three letters. And finally, contains, if we type in STE, it's going to find people who have their name that starts with STE, ends with STE, and has it in the middle. So you have a little bit more options there as to what displays on your screen. How do we sort these values once they're returned? When we're ready to do the search, I can type in something, or I can simply click within the box, hit enter, and that's going to display your entire client list. Because this database really doesn't have that many clients, you see how that works. They all display on the screen. Each of these is sortable alphabetically or numerically, depending on what type of a field it is. To view the patients, we would simply highlight the name of the client, select View Patients, pick which patient we want to work with, and hit Select. That's going to take the client and patient, move them to the upper left-hand corner. So now we've got Connolly, Frank, and Tankette, and they are the active client and patient once that loads. There it is. So that's one way to search. Another way to search, and we're going to jump over maps for just a second, is using the quick search. The quick search takes all of those different search boxes that you had at the top of the screen in previous versions of Infinity and allows you to consolidate them down into one box. A request that we've had very often is, I want to type in James, and I wanted to find anybody whose first name is James, last name is James, they live on James Street, they live in Jamestown. It's going to find anybody who, as long as those fields have been set up, have the word James in one of those fields. Another great way to use the quick search is for phone numbers. You in the past had to search home phone, cell phone, work phone individually, one field at a time. We can tell the quick search to contain all three of those values, so when I type in a phone number, it searches home, cell, and work and finds the right people for you. So that's going to help you to really save some time, and instead of having to search multiple times to make sure that you're getting the right individuals. Also on this front ribbon, we have a mapping feature. I jumped over it just a couple seconds ago. The mapping feature is going to be great for your new staff members. You have a customer that calls up, maybe a brand new customer who's never been to your practice before, needs directions how to get there. And your front desk worker maybe is new to the area as well, and they're trying to explain, well, you got to go left by Target and take a right by another, the gas station, and we're 3 blocks from there. That doesn't help very much if both people aren't familiar with the area. So we can actually choose to map directions to the clinic, and if you happen to be going to the customer, you can choose directions to the client. We have 2 other directions that can come in with Infinity 5.0, to the stable and to the trainer for those large animal practices where you're going someplace other than the client's house. So you have those as available options if they were available within the database. Speaking of database, we have a database menu that has been in the program since pretty much the very beginning. We didn't want to get rid of that because we know how important that menu is, so that menu stays. It's just in a different location. And then we have ready to conclude. This is our invoicing menu. In the invoicing menu, we can choose, is this invoice ready to conclude? Do we want to do a price check, change the iNote, look at the checkout instructions, conclude the invoice, or review the invoice? This menu should look familiar to you as well because the invoice, or the invoicing menu has been in Infinity for a couple of years now. Again, it's a menu that we know is very important to many of you, so we've left it in the program, just once again in a little bit of a different spot. Moving over just a little further, the client and patient notes. They used to be in the upper right-hand corner. They've now moved to the middle of the screen. We see client and patient, so it's very clear which is for client and which is for patient. When we have a client note, in parentheses, it's going to tell you how many notes there are. So if there are 3 different notes about this client, it's going to say client, and in parentheses, it'll say 3. And the same for the patient. When we click on the client note, we can go to New and create a new note from scratch. And this has a little bit of a different look than what maybe you're used to in the current version of Infinity. The screen's changed a little bit. We can change the icon, hit OK, and now there is my first note. We also have the option to do predefined notes. So let's go ahead and click that button, and we see that there's a collections client. Maybe this is somebody that was just sent to collections. We want to put that note on their account. We select it, hit OK, and now this customer has 2 notes on their account, the flag and the smiley face. When we close out of this screen, we'll see that there are the 2 notes. The one that's the most important, the one with the highest priority, will appear on the screen. And to look at those notes, we click, and there they are. We can expand out to see extra information if there was more information to display. Okay, so the predefined notes I think are going to be pretty valuable to those that use these notes on a regular basis and have to type the same message over and over and over again. Create a predefined note, even if it's like a form where you have to fill in some information. At least you're giving your staff a start to put that predefined note in and answer some of the questions that may be coming up. How do you create the predefined notes? Well, same as you did with any of the other setup screens. Use this little drop down here to set up predefined client notes or predefined patient notes. Okay, just over a little bit further to the right as we move our way across the screen, and we really have just a handful of other things to display here, but we talked at the very beginning about when you go into the program and you have your operator. The operator replaces the user, and we see that we are logged in as Wendy Brisky. Now Wendy can do anything in the program. It's going to be attributed to her name. For security purposes, Wendy, when she walks away from the workstation, is going to want to lock the operator. This is going to say, here's a list of all of the other employees in the system. They have to select their name, put in their password, and then they are the ones that are logged in as the operator. Now anything that happens in the program is under their name. Now I've been to my doctor, my wife's doctor, we've seen my son's doctor, my daughter's doctor. They all have this kind of a setup with their program because that way they don't have to constantly type in who they are. The system knows who they are based on who they are logged in as, and it helps security-wise because we can go in and we can say, you know, Dr. Dan Bonnet can only see certain parts of the program. When Dr. Dan is logged in, those modules are the only ones that display. We can do the same thing for Dr. Lisa Lanzo, for any of the front desk workers, for the grooming staff, so that, again, the system is customized to meet the needs of the person that's logged in as the operator. It's going to definitely improve security at your practice. Provider gives you a drop-down of all the possible providers. These are the names of the people that can be attributed to an invoice or to a medical record, and we would select the name, and that way when we create a new medical record, go ahead and open the medical record module once again, have that setting get saved. We'll add a new note. Notice how Dr. Lisa Lanzo is the provider. Dr. Lisa was dropped in as the provider of this medical record. If we go into invoicing and add something to the invoice, Dr. Lisa is automatically selected as the default employee because, again, at the very beginning we chose Dr. Lisa as the default provider. Desktop, again, our desktop settings, the way that the program looks and feels, all goes back to the desktop. We can create as many little desktops as we want to, and again have multiple computers logged into the same desktop setting as we'd like. Lock will actually lock the computer, not just the program. It locks the computer, and some practices hit Control-Alt-Delete and Enter, and that locks the workstation. They have to log back into the Windows user. This provides a little bit of a shortcut to do that for you. And then our refresh button. So that's the main ribbon of the screen, our home ribbon, with many great features added into Infinity 5.0. Looking at some of the other ribbons, just to reiterate, the modules exist here, and they can be customized. The different ribbons, the different setup screens are immediately below what you're trying to set up. So if it's something that only has one setup screen, that one setup screen will be there. If it's something with multiple setup screens will be there, easily accessible for you. Now I am going to go into the desktop preferences that's located under the business menu. In desktop preferences, I'm going to point out that there are several things that you can customize with the desktop. I've already mentioned the ribbon bar. We can change the list bar over on the left-hand side of the screen. But one of the great features of Infinity 5.0, and one thing that's going to help you with this transition from your current version to 5.0, is the auto launch modules. Having to figure out where everything is located again is not going to be the easiest task. I mean, once you've used the system for a day or two, it won't be that difficult to find your modules. But in the meantime, we have this feature called auto launch modules, we select which modules we'd like to have automatically open when we open Infinity. And it also has to do with the desktop. So you could say that if you choose the, let's go with the DVM desktop. We choose the DVM desktop, we want to only see medical records and patient processing and easy time. Those are the modules that should open up every time we log in as the DVM small animal. It saves our changes. Let me go ahead and close out of the program, open it back up again as the DVM small animal. Oh, no, server selection stays the same. So I accidentally clicked the arrow there. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. We're going to change the desktop to DVM small animal. Hit OK here. It's going to log into the program. You're going to see that desktop to begin with, the picture, but right away you're going to get easy time, medical records, and patient processing without ever having to locate those modules. That's a great option. For those that use modules like the treatment plan and think, boy, I'd love to be able to take that module and put it over to another screen, if you've got the appropriate video cards and a second monitor, you can simply hook that second monitor up and actually drag treatment over to a second screen. In a webinar, it's difficult to display this, but please trust me that the second half of treatment plan is way over on the other screen. The first half of the treatment plan is on the first screen. And we would just continue to drag it off to the second screen, maximize it, and then we have the treatment on one full screen by itself, all the rest of the program on the other. In the past, you had to get a separate license for that to happen. Now you pretty much just have the program loaded on one workstation with the appropriate video cards and double monitors, and that'll work for you and your practice. Okay. The list bar hasn't really changed that much. We have our recent clients, recent patients, current invoices, today's reservations, and today's appointments. All of those were in the previous version of Infinity. The biggest change here is that you have a nice looking picture of the patient. Hover over the top, you get even a bigger picture with some database information. So just a little bit of a nicer look and feel than the previous version of the program. A previous version, it was just basically the icon. If it was a dog, it was a dog icon. If it was a cat, it was a cat icon. Here it's the actual picture, so it helps your staff to know which patient they're working with because they can look at the picture and see it. And you can actually increase the size of the little image here. Let me switch back over to administrator. I think I made those much bigger on the administrator side. There we go. So a little bit bigger image that can be customized for your practice. Okay, so that covers the majority of the desktop. I want to point out a couple other quick things. One thing that I failed to mention at the very beginning when we were logging in is changing the date. Some people have asked for the date to automatically be changed at midnight when the Windows date changes, and up until this point that was not a possibility. That has changed. You now have the ability to say that at the strike of midnight, when it hits 12 o'clock, we can advance the date to the next day without ever having to go in and advance the date. So that's a feature that is going to be available. Let's take a look at the wait history. The wait history is a little bit different. When we double click on the wait, we get a little bit of a nicer looking wait history. We can also come in and add a wait in this spot. In the previous version of Infinity, you always had to enter it under the database or it would not update the database. In this version, we can go to add, type in the weight. So let's say that they weigh 8.5 pounds this time. Save it. The new weight appears here. And when we go over to the database module and bring up that patient, we should see that they now weigh. Oh, I brought the client up by accident. Edit patient. Oh, that didn't switch the right way, so that's something I'll have to point out. Oh, what did I do there? Let me see here. Double click. Bullet. You know what? I had a different patient selected, so that's why that didn't go in correctly. I'm going to go ahead and add to ZZ now. Make ZZ 70 pounds. There's the new weight. I hit OK here. Now when I go into ZZ's information, ZZ weighs 70 pounds. There we go. There are probably still some of you out there that are a little skeptical as to how you're going to make this transition, because you know it is a different look and feel to the program. We've built in a couple of different safety nets for you. Not to mention the desktop that you're looking at, that the picture should get you to where you need to go. But in the upper right-hand corner, we can type in a module. If I have no clue, I'm frantically trying to find the appointment scheduler, I can simply type in easy, there's easy time. I'm looking for the database module, DAT, there's the database module. Medical records, MED, there's medical records. So it's much, much faster to find what you need by using this typing in the upper right-hand corner. If you're trying to find setup screens or other menu options that you used to have, click on the Infinity logo in the upper left-hand corner. And you can go through and select all of the same menus that you've had in the past. Here, as a matter of fact, is our setup screen. Setup, accounts receivable, global options. If you don't know where that global options is within the program, you can simply go to that Infinity logo, locate it where it used to be. And I believe the setup screens are also maybe, let's see, I'm trying to remember how that works. I believe some of the setup screens, if not all of them, are set to come up on this upper right hand corner. So like code colors, breeds, that's going to take you right into the setup screen. So keep that in mind as well, that you can use the Infinity logo in the upper left or type in the module or setup screen that you'd like to get into. Alright. I'm trying to think of anything else I really want to point out here. I think I've covered just about everything. I guess the final point that I'll make is that the modules themselves, I know I said this at the very beginning, but the modules themselves really haven't changed. Easy Time and medical records and database, treatments, all those modules are the same as what they've always been. They just load into a different looking screen. So it's really this outlying area here that has changed. This front desk picture, as well as the ribbon bars and the list bars. That is what's different. And I know I've said this probably in every webinar that I've done, even some of the podcasts I've done about 5.0. I kind of compare this to building a house. Infinity is like a house. It's your dream house that you want to build, but we have to start with the foundation. We start with the foundation. The foundation is the desktop. That's what you see on the screen. That's what I showed you here today. And now we want to add on to that foundation by putting in some really great modules like the appointment scheduler and medical records treatment plans, reworking those. So we're going to remodel those, add those to the foundation. And again, the great thing about doing it that way is we could have just rewritten the entire program, handed it over to you and said, here, figure out all the modules, and that would have been a nightmare. Learning the desktop first is going to be great. Then add a couple modules here and there. You'll be able to pick things up much faster, and the transition is going to be a much easier one than, again, if we had just rewritten the program, given it all to you. And so that's again kind of a description of why we are doing things the way we're doing things and how we're hoping that'll benefit you in your practice. The modules are going to come. I know that they are talking about working on the appointment scheduler, and I believe they're working on the appointment scheduler and boarding, the treatment plan. Those are among the first that will probably be rewritten, and so we'll hopefully within just a couple months be able to present those to you in webinars similar to the way we're presenting Infinity 5.0. Again, 5.0 is in the final stages of beta testing. Once the final betas are in and have been running successfully, we will then release to the rest of the users. But we want to make sure that, again, your operating systems, your hardware, everything like that is up to what it needs to be to handle this new programming language. So if you have any questions on any of this, don't ever hesitate to give our support department a call. If they can't answer your question, they will put you in contact with somebody that will, to make sure that, again, this transition is as smooth as it can possibly be. Now, are there any questions out there from the audience that's in this live webinar here today? You can ask your questions using the chat. The chat should be located over on the right-hand side of your screen. Simply click within the box that says type message here, type your message, and that lets me know you've got a question, and I'll do my best to answer it during this webinar here today. I can also unmute a phone line too. If you want me to unmute your line, simply just let me know in the chat, and I can unmute your line, allow you to ask your question over the phone. While I'm waiting to see if there are any questions, I will say that we are recording this session and have been recording it since the beginning. As soon as this is done, we will go ahead and produce the recording, get it posted out to the website, out to the ICANN, so you can watch this again at your convenience. If you would like to start playing around with Infinity 5.0, you can do so by going out to the ICANN, going to WebInfinity, and launching Infinity 5.0 from WebInfinity. And that gives you the ability to play around, get used to using it before you ever install it live within your practice. Alright, so that gave enough time, I think, to see if there were any questions. So since there are no questions, I'm going to go ahead and conclude the webinar here today. I do appreciate the live audience for attending live and in person, and for those who are watching this recording, really for everybody, if you have questions, again, give us a call here at Impromed, 1-800-925-7171. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. I hope you're as excited about the new modules being rewritten in the future, as well as obviously what you saw here today with Infinity 5.0. Have a great day, and we will talk to you in a future webinar. Bye-bye.